Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce, the podcast where we talk to extraordinary coaches and leaders to dive into the realms of leadership and coaching. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. So let's jump in with another guest and find out their answer to the question, what is your secret sauce? All right, welcome back. We have been discussing the models of organizational competence, or the coaching culture models that Dave and I developed over the years, primarily formed when we were with the conference board, the Executive Coaching Council. And we have talked about about three of the five models, the anywhere from the startup model, the decentralized model, the decentralized with organizational standards. And now we're going to move on to the fourth one, which is the centralized with organizational competence. This is before our most advanced one, where we would describe it as the sort of the organic coaching culture. So Dave, tell us a little bit about the centralized model with organizational competence.
Thank you, Matt. So this model, centralized with organizational competence, not that we said that enough times yet, but features centralized management with internal coaching capability, standardized vendors, and substantial diagnostic tools are utilized. Coaching is integrated with HR processes and available to most organizational levels. So what is interesting for me, Matt, is as we move through the different models, what's different about this model for you? What do you really like about it, to start with?
Well, I think what happens is the organization begins to feel like, hey, we think we can take on some of this coaching ourselves. And you begin to offer internal coaches sort of a win-win for them, training them as internal coaches, giving them that opportunity where they feel like they're doing something or feeling like they're accomplishing something or able to really contribute for significant leaders, given whatever the trust is inside the organization. And you're still allowing some people that say, hey, look, I don't yet trust an internal coach. I need someone from the outside. So you're not sort of eliminating that. You're beginning to create this mosaic of different coaching offerings, which would include internal coaching. So
it sounds like a significant investment, right, to be able to pull this off. So when do you think you have an ROI as an organization, and when do you think it's overkill?
Well, I think the thing that happens inside of this, you have to evaluate, hey, is there a pull from inside of your HR and your learning and development people to want to be able to do some of this coaching? Because if I can do some internal coaching, it's possible that I may be able to save some green dollars going out the door with some external coaching that maybe hang on a long time, or that are not necessarily deriving any more value because they're all trained at the same competence level. But I do think you're right. It does cost something to have an internal coaching practice. And if those employees leave, you have just invested a lot in those internal coaches, and you lose them. But that's sort of where I think where it comes in is, if you are training people, they will remember that, and they will want to stay because they feel like they're adding some type of value always, or being in those crucial conversations with those leaders. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I do. I think it's interesting. What came to mind is like you're building capability. And there's a certain amount of culture building in this, right? There's choices of how much. So it's in terms of the process of building that capability, it's how do you make choices about what to invest internally, and when do you make choices to buy it from the outside?
I think maybe the advent of some of the democratized coaching really changed that conversation in organizations, in terms of having to think like, hey, look, can we get this coaching at scale for large numbers of people where we don't have internal resources for it? And we can go out and get it. We can get it in multiple languages. We can get it wherever those people are. And I think that changed kind of the equation on this centralized with organizational competence. So, Dave, what about tracking? We're talking about like, so if we're going to measure how much coaching we're doing in an organization, say your organization's 30 to 50,000 employees, and you're trying to measure like, hey, how much coaching are we really doing? What's the, what would you see works well in terms of tracking? You say you've got an internal coaching practice, you've got the external folks. How do you measure how much you're doing?
Yeah, great question. I think, beyond a really large, cumbersome Excel spreadsheet, right? It's similar to how we have adopted learning management systems, right? When we're dealing with larger scale, there are many coaching platforms that are available that can be very helpful. So I think there is a certain amount of activity tracking, ease of administration. And then there is, in terms of like, how do you decide what success looks like and what measures you're going to use and how you're going to evaluate it. And then, it's like a long list of things comes to mind, in addition to, the capability and competence of your coaches and being able to have some standard benchmarks around that, and then being able to keep everybody accountable to what those are.
Yeah, it's kind of this type of model creates the need for some type of quarterback, halfback, whatever, some type of coordinator for that. And you can't necessarily have your director of coaching services or the manager of coaching services do that administrative type of things. There has to be, you either have to have technology in place to capture the number of times to be able to run the number of meetings or things like that, or have the coaches do it. You have to be able to measure it in some way to say, look, how many sessions are we doing? What are we paying for? If you don't have a democratized platform like Ezra, Coach Hub, or BetterUp, if they are not capturing the number of sessions that, because you have sort of that external number and then you've got the internal number, and you want to kind of figure out what does the total picture look like?
Yeah, it's like there are many important questions there. And I think it is like going into it like a good business case needs to be developed so that you can um, justify the additional spend to have a quality program, right? It's I've seen many folk struggle to kind of keep up with the internal demands, and depending on what you're doing around internal charges or not, you demand can really shift and change, and you have to be prepared to be able to market those services, but then also be able to deal with um, the level of demand and spikes. What's your experience with that of being able to have that business case and meet those demands?
Well, I think it sort of brings up a couple of different ideas that I had in terms of like managing demand. One of them, you have it, depending upon your vendor, like if you have that opportunity to meet with the coaches, you can understand what's going on in the business, like the pull that you're getting, or to find out really how often they're meeting or the number of open contracts. That's kind of on the external side where you have a more high touch coaching. Then, of course, you don't necessarily have to, you can allow some of your democratized platforms to manage that for you. And then you actually have to do that with your internal coaches to kind of figure out, hey, what kind of things, how many engagements are you pulling? How are we helping you with the volume that you're currently at? We used to have the company I used to work for, we would say, excuse me, an internal coach should have up to 2 engagements at any one time. And that's all we would ask if they were an internal coach, is just to keep it at 2, just so that they could continue to do their current role. Now, they were not dedicated to coaching. These are internal coaches. That would be a portion of their time. It's sort of As a result of their training, we asked them to give back to us 2 engagements at any one time. So that was one way. It also brings up this other idea around engaging your current coaching pool to keep them engaged, almost like a community of practice. And then the other thing that we did was we said, hey, if you're interested in coaching, you have a desire at some point in time, we would use it as a way to evangelize a potential internal coaching pool and get them excited about coaching or like a coach. And that kind of helped us with some of our supervisor skills, coaching skills for supervisors. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think in a previous initiative, we ran once a month coaching community calls, and we did internal. We built internal capability. We created kind of a global internal certification with a set of competencies, with a process, and then of course COVID hit, and we had to shift it up and change it a good bit. But it took us probably a year and a half to 2 years to figure out how to make this work virtually as well as it was working for our in-person training sessions and coaching sessions.
Yeah. Dave, this is a question that I would get asked. How do you make the business case either to the organization or to HR that this model would be a favorable model?
Yeah, I think a lot of different ways to do it, and I guess it is the spaghetti sauce of your choice. Malcolm Gladwell. It's what's going to work for your organization might be different, but I've seen some things that have worked. One thing to look at is how you currently are spending coaching dollars, and how you could possibly be more efficient and possibly more effective. Also, looking at what are some of the more challenging and deeper organizational outcomes that you're trying to accomplish. If your leadership is looking for a new level of collaboration, new level of motivation, of getting more out of the existing organization, you can make a business case for how coaching might contribute to that.
Yeah, and I would also think that as the excitement would grow for coaching in an organization where people think that they may be experiencing coaching, whether if that's through a democratized platform or something like that, they're experiencing it and they're like, hey, whatever this is, I want to see if I could do that too. Is there any way? And so I think going to HR with that possibility, like, hey, we could train some of your HR talent to be more coach-like, and be more strategic in asking better questions of the business rather than being so tactical and really just being data providers or data input or anything like that, to be able to ask the business leader the question rather than have the answers, and move from an asking or a questioning type of group rather than like a fact checking or policy enforcing organization. Dave, what have you seen in terms of technology? How would you enable technology for a centralized with organizational competence model?
If you asked me this question a year ago, it might have been different. It's the technology has changed so rapidly. I think we have tools at our disposal to really accelerate these. There are some platforms that absolutely we can look into, and now with the capability of using AI, you possibly could design in what you need in a system. I'm not my area of expertise, but what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is part of your mosaic of your coaching, your whole offering should be some type of AI-enabled coaching. And maybe that is, you offer a coach bot, and that's also included in your things that you're offering as an organization. And maybe it's, like your AI coach bot, as well as, to person, if that's something. It just becomes one more piece. Now, if we're looking at kind of the infrastructure and sort of managing this whole thing, I think that is, you have to use something that would capture it. And I've seen plenty of examples where organizations they will use either a blend of Microsoft Forms, coaching.com, any of these other things that capture some of the sessions and some of the tools that are sort of part of their coaching world. That's primarily on the internal side. On the external side, I think they have to challenge some of the vendors that don't offer a technology-enabled solution to capture that. I think companies that offer democratized coaching have really advanced a lot in some of their data capture type of things, and some of these older generational sort of like more boutique coaching companies, they're going to have to get with it on terms of the coaching platforms to be able to capture some of the data. And I think some of those democratized platforms are forcing those boutique firms to capture more data. So,
Yeah, I want to add. I think I was thinking in terms of like platforms to help you run an in-person one.
yeah.
You brought up a really good point, which is the use of AI directly for coaching. And I kind of I see a reality like an 80-20 world where over time 80% of I think basic managerial function in including coaching is going to be done via AI, and then that 20% human critical deeper connection, deeper challenges, nuanced organizations, more complex coaching areas, you need good coaches to be able to fill that in.
Hmm. Dave, that sort of comment leads me to think, okay, so you've had some external coaches that have been around for a long time. What happens to those people? What do you do with those partners that have been around for a while in this centralized with organizational competence?
Yeah, I think the natural flow of utilizing talent on the outside, right? It's going to be a different answer on the inside. On the outside is you need to keep it fresh. You need to continually look at your talent pool and make sure it meets the demands of the day, right, of your clients.
Yeah.
And then also I recognizing and appreciating people that have a history with the organization and know it. The other part of that, like internally, I think, I have experience like doing internal coaching certifications and having people who are in other roles, often HRBPs, play the coaching role. To your point, having two clients at a time. Um, Over time, it has been really tough to keep those people in coaching roles for a couple of reasons. One, they evolve into other roles and to other jobs, right? And at first I resisted it, and then I thought, all right, we need to think more of like college sports as opposed to professional sports, right? We need to continually train a new batch of individuals to keep it fresh internally. So that's where I landed on that. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think some so my niche obviously was kind of on the oil and gas industry, and there were some external coaches that were really known for knowing enough about the organization and getting pull from recommendations inside of the organization. Oh, I really want this person. So they would come to me as the manager of coaching and say, hey, I think so and so recommended that I interview or have a meet and greet with this person. So I don't think we necessarily downplay that as a way of meeting the needs of the business leaders. So I think that that's still possible. And I also think that when we challenge those, external coaches to kind of level up to some of our requirements in the organization, they're going to opt in and play along, or they're going to just be like, no, I really don't want to do that, which is okay. And that just means that the organization is asking for more information and more centralized information so that we can see, hey, look, are we getting better? Are we getting our money's worth for our coaching? So, okay. So Dave, when organizations, this is something that is, I know you have experience with, when organizations build internal coaching or accreditation or certification, I want you to differentiate certification from accreditation. What makes them credible versus sort of a check the box? Hey, look, these are all, whatever. Maybe it's, ICF, ACC level. Help us sort of break down those various things as it relates to having internal coaches.
Yeah, I think there's so many things there, Matt, and this is close to my heart in terms of building internal capability for coaching, and I think how do you keep that credible and sustainable? I would say as well. One, back to the point we were discussing, which is you need to look at it as a continuous model, where you're moving new talent in, you're building that coaching capability. I think the best models are, you're doing, manager as coach, building capability. You're selecting people that are really good coaches to embed them into processes like 360 feedback and have them do coaching debrief. So I think keeping it sustainable is having the right built-in activity that results in good coaching conversations. Having them assist with the 360 feedback is an example of that. Being available to help managers before they have their mid-cycle check-ins, performance appraisals, areas like that. And then I think it's, that the having a process, clear guidelines, having some boundaries in terms of what you agree is held confidential in a coaching conversation and what is not, so that the process has credibility so it can sustain, are some of the things top of mind for me. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, you kind of brought up the trust of the internal coaches. That to me is, I would call table stakes. If you don't have that inside, so you could say you put all of these HR, learning and development types of people through some type of accreditation program, or they're on their path to certification. But if you don't have the trust inside the organization, it's going to be very challenging to get the pull from the business to want to be coached by those people. So it's almost like you're building up a separate, you have your external, whether that's democratized or more boutique type, white glove treatment type of coaching. And then you're going to have to mature this internal coaching group. And it will have to start slowly, and it will build some momentum until more in the organization is like, hey, look, I had a great experience with so-and-so coach. They were just as good as buying it from Ezra. In fact, they knew our business far better than Ezra. I didn't have to catch them up. They didn't have to worry about the names or, the players or anything like that. They were really able to understand what I was going through, not from that they've been through it, just where they were able to ask some questions, and it sped the whole process up. I think that that's kind of one of those things where, as the manager of coaching, because this is the model that you begin to really need, someone that manages coaching, as well as potentially some type of coordinator to manage your workload and how you're bringing those internal coaches together. If it's not one person, it needs to be a team of people or even a volunteer that would be willing to do that coordination. So I think that is where we get to. And I think also this last model is where we begin to see that you can offer coaching, internal coaching, as some type of benefit for those people that are passionate or have an interest in coaching, to keep them engaged and keep them feeling like they are contributing ultimately to the goals of the organization. Yeah. All right. Any other last thoughts, Dave, before we close on that?
Well said, Matt. And I'm looking forward to discussing the next model, where we look at Model E, organic coaching culture, and we continue to evolve.
All right. Till next time. Thanks for listening. If you love this podcast, please share it with another coach or leader. Make sure you go to the show notes to get all the resources from today's episode.